Well, ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker, Susan Daniel, amongst her other talents, she's the, and she can correct me, the Queensland Director of Chaplaincy Australia. I think we're very, very fortunate, and she's got a Masters in Counselling. So I'll leave it all up to you, Susan.
So my name is Susan, and I am the Director for Queensland and Northern Territory for a group. Our movement of churches is the ACC, Australian Christian Churches, formerly AOG. So I get to oversee the chaplains and organise disaster response. And I may have a Master in Counselling, and I may have done a little bit of study, but the truth is when you start to look into this subject, it's enormous. And I'm very quick to say I'm not an expert on depression, on the facts around depression and on treating depression. I see people with depression and I have had depression. And I think the experts for depression are those of you that live with it day in and day out, or those of you that live with family members day in and day out. Because when you have depression, it takes a real lot of courage to get up each day, to walk through each day. And so I just really want to honour those of you, those of us, who have experienced or are experiencing that in our lives. It's a tough call. My goal for today, through conversation, is I want to do a few things. I'm hoping that the information I offer will give some of you like an aha moment. Ah, that's what it is. Will help you feel a little bit more confident. And this is what I want to leave you with. I want you to feel confident to perhaps go to your mate, and we know the slogan, "Are you okay?" And to have confidence if they say, "No, I'm not." So I want to do that. I want to speak up, and I want you also to gain confidence to speak up and tell some of your story. The stigma around depression, we need to stamp it out. We need to move on from this. And we each have a story. And I hope we gain confidence to tell our story. I hope you also will gain some confidence to speak up if you're concerned about somebody that's in your life. I hope that when you leave here, my aim is that you'll perhaps a little better recognise some of the symptoms, and if you actually recognise them for yourself, that you will have the courage to seek help. In a day when medical science, we've got so many cures, and yet medical science can't, still to this day, pinpoint exactly why somebody will experience depression. Because we're being filmed today, I've decided that instead of, different stories from different clients and that I see, I'll mostly speak from my own experience. What we do know about depression is that we might not know the exact cause, but we do know that it is usually the result of a couple of contributing factors. So it's some of these will be our personality. I could be somebody that's known to be a worrier. I could be somebody with low self-esteem, and I'm anxious. You've been with those people who are always negative. What do we call them? The cup half full person. So that could be a contributing factor. Our family history plays a part. The way we learned or didn't learn to cope and to manage with our stuff in life. The way we sort of learned through observation to handle stress and to handle anxieties. Another factor with family history could be we have people in our family who have suffered and experienced depression. Now, this doesn't mean that we will, but again, it's a contributing factor. Another factor would be use of alcohol and drugs. This can be contributing as well as we have depression and we seek to soothe our pain and discomfort in alcohol and drugs. So with some of these, they will be symptoms of as well as contributing factors. Trauma certainly plays a part in depression, and so do some medical issues. Sometimes different illnesses we have, sometimes the medication we have can all again be contributing factors. And so it's sort of it can be one or some of these contributing factors, and then we can have an event. And I know for myself, I can look back and see it when you sort of, you're like in a depressive state, and you don't recognise that the very life is being sucked out of you. And like a slow leak on a flat tyre, or on a tyre, it just goes down so gradually, like a tilting ship. You know, you just keep adjusting to the tilt, and the tilt's going this way, you try to put things in place to counterbalance that. And then I remember so clearly, I was sitting on the front steps in the sun, and I thought I was quite lucid and rational, and I thought, I wonder what we're going to have for dinner tonight. And it just created this enormous anxiety attack in me. Oh my God, they're going to be home soon, they're going to want dinner. And it was just like, and like now, I just think, oh my goodness. But I got in the car and I drove 2 hours to hide at my dad's place because I just could not, you know. So did making dinner cause depression? No. I had this working in my life, so there were contributing factors. I've always been a worrier, and no, I'm going to rephrase that. I always was a worrier. I've learned strategies now to put in place around that. But unless we acknowledge it and unless we learn strategies, we just do what we've always done. So when we get depressed, so it's the stress, it's the anxiety, sometimes there's losses involved. What happens is we just get stretched beyond our normal coping strategies, and we will often end up with what we call depression. And it's certainly much more than a feeling. It's certainly much more than feeling blue. I would imagine each of us in this room has at some stage, at some time, felt some form of depression, or, you know, I've felt depressed. And certainly when we experience grief, one of the stages of grief is depression. You know, we work through that hopelessness and the senses that we'll discuss later. But having and experiencing depression is more than that, as you would know. It becomes so severe, and the sadness just, we are sad. It becomes our identity, and we lose the meaning of life. We start to consider, what's the point? What's the point? And life's just too much. And that cloak of heaviness around our shoulder, we just can't do it anymore. And it's like the very life has sucked out of us. That's one description of depression. If you are experiencing depression, you will have your own description of that. You'll have your own story of that. And I'm just quick to say that there are different forms of depression, and I've just written down a couple of them. There's a major depressive disorder. Sometimes you may have heard that called clinical depression. There's melancholia, where we experience the symptoms of the major depressive disorder, but then it's even more. It's like, even to walk, everything slows down. And it's like we're just so bowed down with life that even our walking becomes affected. Everything we do, there is not an ounce of vitality in us. There's antenatal and postnatal depression, and I experienced both of them. There's psychotic depression, which can involve hallucinations and paranoia, and there's more. So for today, I'm not actually going to speak about that. I believe somebody like a psychologist or psychiatrist is better qualified to speak from that, because I'm not expert in that. What I want us to do, we might not be expert in that, but I want us to become a little more expert, gain a little bit of expertise around recognising symptoms, around speaking up. Has anybody heard the phrase breaking the silence? The footballers are doing ads at the moment about breaking the silence, ridiculous ads like, can I borrow your undies, or something in a laundromat. We're just trying to highlight, and there's plenty of information online if you put in breaking the silence. What I'm hoping for today is that we will gain expertise in breaking the silence, because the stigma of depression holds people for too long in its grip. And I actually call the depression the thief, because I think depression robs us. It robs us of life, it robs us of relationships, it robs us of joy, it robs us too often of people we love, because it just gets too much. And I want to break the silence on that. And I want us to become expert in doing that. Research tells us that antidepressant medication and therapy is an effective way to treat depression. There's also one theory, or a couple of theories, that's research that highlight relationships as being a contributing factor to one's wellness. And for today, that's sort of the focus I want to take. Again, let's become expert, let's become more knowledgeable in recognising, speaking up and seeking help for ourselves or for one of our mates. It is important, we're not going to discuss the different depressions, but it is important that you do, if you have depression, that you get that diagnosed, because different depressions have different treatment. And if treatment's available and if treatment works, let's get it. Let's do what it takes to become well. There are also many excellent websites, and Pauline, my beautiful assistant Pauline, has or is going to hand them out now. That's just for you to take home. Truly, Googling depression will bring up so many anyway, so you can gain that information. If you believe, and I want to say this so clearly, if you believe you have depression, and even if you're just not sure, seek help from a GP. Go and find out. Unlike medical illnesses and diseases, or some medical illnesses and diseases, depression is treatable. It's very treatable.